Discover the incredible night that transformed Italy. A duchess's hidden love sealed her destiny. Elena's thoughts raced as she cleaned her paint-splattered hands, glancing at her small, vibrant classroom. The walls echoed with the laughter of her students, yet beneath their joyous sounds, a relentless whisper taunted her, "What have you truly achieved?" Being an art teacher in a bustling New York City neighborhood filled with colorful murals and the vibrancy of Italian heritage was both a joy and a torment. Her heart was heavy with the weight of her family's expectations, and the looming specter of her estranged grandmother, a revered artist whose legacy now felt like a distant shadow. Elena's colleagues, established and celebrated, often overlooked her contributions, dismissing her fresh perspectives as naive. A bitter envy bubbled whenever they praised each other's work while her talent felt muted. A wave of inadequacy washed over her as she recalled her family's history, where every artist's stroke had been celebrated, mere whispers of their struggles buried beneath the achievements. She was a product of them, yet those roots felt like chains binding her to expectations she feared she wouldn't fulfill. When the news of her grandmother's death reached her, it was as if a thunderclap shattered her already fragile confidence. Mixed emotions swirled within her, sorrow at the loss, curiosity about the woman with whom she had shared no memories, and guilt for her ambivalence. Elena rummaged through her grandmother's belongings, unearthing a letter hidden in a tattered memoir. The words revealed a secret that unraveled her history, a connection to a long-lost Italian duchess whose heart belonged to a humble artist, shunned by society. A hidden legacy waiting to be claimed, waiting to be explored. But exploring it came with familial resistance. Her family, fearful of the past that led to their grandmother's estrangement, frowned upon her desire to embrace what they had sought to bury. "Why stir up wounds?" her mother had asked, the plea in her voice ringing in Elena's ears. "You won't find anything but disappointment." The pressure to excel weighed heavily, mixing with the fire ignited by the discovery, leaving her in tumult. The facade of her professional life was crumbling, especially with a powerful rival at the school, always ready to twist her words and undermine her lessons. Elena often caught her eyeing her work with a scornful smirk, as if waiting for her to fail so she could take the spotlight. Behind every compliment lay a hidden dagger. Could she forge ahead into the depths of her heritage when the very ground beneath her was shaking? Caught in a storm of identity beneath the harsh fluorescent lights of the art department, Elena's breaths became shallow. Should she abandon her desire to honor her roots for a safer path to professional validation? Or risk everything and stand firm against familial pressures, diving into the unknown? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A night at an opening exhibition loomed, and Elena poured herself into her art, evoking the style of the Duchess she had kept hidden. Each brush stroke resonated with her truth, creating a shroud of anticipation around her pieces. Every canvas felt alive, and soon, it seemed others recognized it too. Critics began to pay attention, and respected peers nodded in appreciation. Just as the tide seemed to be turning, however, an unsettling encounter with her rival sent anxiety crashing over her. What if her growing respect in the community soured the moment she unveiled her heritage? Wrapped in a feeling of impending doom, Elena stood before the Duchess's portrait in her studio, a silent compass guiding her amidst confusion. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her heart, testing her resolve. At that pivotal moment, her thoughts spiraled into uncertainty, grappling with the haunting question: what was she willing to sacrifice to reclaim her family's legacy? The clock ticked, and the echoes of her dreams intertwined with the shadows of fear, forcing her to confront a destiny looming ever closer, as unresolved struggles continued to derail her heart's ambition. Elena stood before her easel, the cool brush gripped tightly in her hand as her mind swirled with doubt and determination. Each stroke painted the essence of courage, a reflection of the Duchess's resilient spirit. But the loud chatter of her colleagues outside seeped into her sanctuary, accompanied by knowing glances and veiled whispers. As she mixed her colors, she could almost hear their thoughts, questioning her place in a world that felt increasingly competitive and hostile. Focus, she muttered to herself, but it was difficult. The opening exhibition approached like an ominous storm, a culmination of her fears and aspirations. What if she failed to honor her grandmother's legacy? An unsettling thought darted through her mind: should she not only reveal her work but also the secret of her ancestry? The prospect of judgment weighed heavily on her shoulders. Days passed, each marked by the mounting pressure of expectations not just from her family, but from within. The contrast between her passion for art and the expectations of her lineage simmered beneath her skin. In quiet moments, she recalled her grandmother's struggles, the battles fought silently, the brush with hidden love not spoken of, an echo of vulnerability that now resonated with her own unease. Could she find strength in that shared experience? Or would it only deepen her conflicts? Elena spent nights in her studio, increasingly immersed in her exhibition pieces. Each painting blossomed with layers of emotion, a rebellion against familiarity. Yet, there stood her rival, Claudia, a relentless force fixed on undermining her efforts. Just that afternoon, in the faculty lounge, Claudia had cornered her, feigning concern as she mocked Elena's ambitions. The pressure of legacy can crush the unprepared, don't you think? Perhaps it's time to reconsider your path. The words dripped with malice, igniting a flame of defensiveness within Elena. But in that moment, instead of responding with complacence, she decided to harness that anger, transforming it into a driving force. Rather than retreat into the shadows, she resolved to embrace what made her different. She sought not only recognition as an artist but a connection to her heritage, a connection no one could dismiss. As the exhibition night loomed closer, Elena strategized her approach. She began crafting a narrative that would envelop her presentation. Why simply show her paintings when she could unveil a story, a legacy? Each piece would not merely reflect her craft, but the intertwining destinies of a duchess and an artist who defied societal norms for love. She would present herself as the living continuation of that rebellion, transforming a tale of shame into a narrative of power. With newfound resolve, she spent countless hours refining her pieces, each stroke a testament to resilience. But in quiet moments, self-doubt whispered again. What if her truth was rejected? What if she faced the disdain of relatives who had long opted for silence? The stakes grew alarming, gnawing at her stomach like a persistent ache. As she prepared to unveil her art, the pressure bore down, and a pivotal choice lay before her. Would she hide her roots to find acceptance in a less judgmental space? Or would she stand firm, unveiling her complete self to a world poised to respond, both critically and supportively? The internal battle plagued her even as she practiced her speech in the mirror, questions consuming her thoughts. The night of the exhibition arrived, a confluence of excitement and anxiety. After lingering in her thoughts, she stood backstage, waiting to step into the spotlight. The soft music played like thunder in her ears, each note reverberating with the same intensity as her heartbeat. As she took a deep breath, the moment crystallized in her mind, one that could define her future. With resolve burning bright, she stepped onto the stage, the weight of her legacy draped on her shoulders. The fear of exposure danced through her veins, but so did the thrill of self-acceptance. The audience looked up, anticipation hanging in the air, as Elena prepared to share more than her art. She opened her mouth, ready to redefine everything, but then, her eyes scanned the crowd, locking onto a familiar face that sent shockwaves through her core. Would this revelation take an unexpected turn? Elena felt her heart stutter, the resonance of her own thoughts drowned out by the sight of the figure who stood at the back of the audience, the regal silhouette of her estranged mother, Caroline. A cascade of emotions crashed over her: shock, disbelief, a surge of old resentments. Her mother's presence was a ghost from her past, one bound in untold stories and unhealed wounds. Why now? The sight of her was both a comfort and a terrifying complication. She faltered for a moment, lost in the tumult of memories and self-doubt. Could she take this personal reckoning and weave it into the narrative of her art without losing her momentum? Taking a deeper breath, she reminded herself that this moment belonged to her and her journey. The fear of judgment loomed like a specter, but beneath that fear lay an undeniable yearning to confront her past, to confront her mother. There was little time to linger in indecision. With newfound determination, she lifted her chin and began to speak, her voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "Thank you all for being here tonight. What you're about to see is not merely art, it's a story, one that has been passed down through generations, rooted in love and resilience. It is a story of a duchess who loved fiercely against societal boundaries, and of an artist who ventures to reclaim that narrative." As she spoke, Elena felt a shift within herself. The life she led in the art world and the lineage she was born into were not separate entities but intertwined threads that formed her holistic identity. Each painting bore silent witness to her struggles, her defiance, and her lineage. Her grandmother's legacy was not one of shame, but rather a battle cry for authenticity, for truth. With each brushstroke showcased, her voice grew firmer, embodying the spirit of her grandmother. "I stand here tonight not just to reveal my artwork, but to reclaim the hidden chapters of my family's history. It is time to celebrate the strength of lineage that has been dulled by silence." As she unveiled the first piece, a canvas bursting with color and emotion, she shared the story behind it. The audience watched attentively as she laid bare her struggle to embrace her artistic identity while navigating the weight of her ancestry. She felt the heat of her mother's gaze pierce through her words, each line painted with bold strokes, mirroring her burgeoning confidence. Elena noticed the mixed expressions in the crowd, some supportive, others skeptical. Yet, as adrenaline coursed through her veins, she realized that she no longer sought anyone's approval. The fear of rejection began to fade into the background, overtaken by the urgency to present her truth. With each revelation, she caught glimpses of Claudia's face, a mask of disdain trying to penetrate her resolve. But it was her mother's expression that struck the hardest, a blend of regret and pride echoing in the air, an unspoken apology lingering between them. Perhaps this moment could shift something deeply rooted in both their lives. Finishing her presentation with an emotional fervor, she concluded, "Let us not hide part of our truths in the shadows. Instead, let us embrace them, for they are what make us whole." The applause erupted, and for a moment, the tension within her shattered like glass. But it only faltered when she caught Caroline's eyes once more. Would her mother step forward after this? Would she confront the chasm that had long divided them? Elena's heart raced. Just as she prepared to walk off stage, her mother began to rise. The moment was electric, heavy with the potential of reconciliation or rejection, an uncharted territory that would redefine everything she had just accomplished. The air thickened, and the audience held their breath as the revelation loomed closer. Elena's heart pulsed in her chest like an ominous drumbeat as she watched Caroline rise from her seat. The tension in the room swirled around her, amplifying the gravity of her mother's movement. Would Caroline reach out, offering a reconciliation they both silently yearned for, or would she retreat back into the shadows of their fractured relationship? The seconds stretched, but to Elena, they felt like hours. Memories flared to life, her mother's harsh words echoing through her childhood, the painful absence present during pivotal moments, the haunting void created by years of silence. Simultaneously, she could still remember fleeting moments of warmth, brief hugs that promised love but never fully materialized. In the depths of her turmoil, Elena found clarity. This was not merely an encounter with her mother, it was an opportunity for Elena to reclaim the narrative not only of her artistic legacy but also of her personal history. She would not let Caroline's choices dictate who she became. With measured steps, Caroline approached the stage, her expression an intricate blend of trepidation and an unspoken plea for connection. "Elena," she began, her voice steady yet vulnerable. "I came because I heard you speak about your truth. It's time I face my own." Elena's pulse quickened at those words. The weight of them pressed down on her, calling her to hold her ground. She was about to speak when Caroline interrupted, a flood of emotions catching up with her. "It's been years since I've lived in your shadow, haunted by my own decisions," she confessed, her voice breaking slightly. "But seeing you here tonight, your strength makes me regret all the moments I failed you." Elena felt the anger simmering within her, but it was tempered by something deeper and unexpected empathy. Hearing her mother voice those regrets ignited something within her, a spark of hope that perhaps they could begin the healing process. "Regret doesn't rewrite our history, Caroline," Elena replied, her voice firm yet empathetic. "It is only now, in this moment, that we can begin to move forward, together. But forgiveness mustn't be one-sided." Caroline's face softened at her daughter's fortitude. Elena realized that bridging the gap between them would not only require action from her mother but would also demand that she confront her own anger and hurt. Could she genuinely forgive? "I'll try, not just for me," Caroline murmured, vulnerability spilling into her tone. "But for you, too." Elena, sensing the genuineness in her mother's words, took a step back, absorbing the gravity of their exchange. The audience remained captivated, and for the first time that evening, she felt the power they both wielded. The energy in the room transformed from tense to electric, as if the very air they breathed was charged with possibility. "Then let this be a beginning," Elena said, her voice growing stronger. "Not just for us, but for our story, a story that can resonate beyond us. Let us embrace the truths that define us, for they are the roots that give us strength." As they shared a tentative but meaningful embrace, Elena felt a shift, not merely in their relationship but within herself, a sense of empowerment that she had only begun to understand. This wasn't simply about forgiving her mother, it was about acknowledging their shared narrative, each painful chapter merging into something beautiful, something real. But as she released her mother, a new wave of uncertainty swept over her. How would she navigate the upcoming conversations about their past? What stories would surface from the depths of unresolved pain? Would they be strong enough to face what lay ahead? Elena caught a glimpse of Claudia, anger etching across her face. Perhaps forgiveness would be tested, and ventures into the unhealed past wouldn't come without resistance from those who clung to easier narratives. The tumult of emotions loomed, creating a backdrop of new challenges to face. As she scanned the audience, her resolve crystallized. It was time to reignite old stories, but with the hope of new endings. Elena stepped back from her mother, squaring her shoulders. "Let us create something beautiful out of this," she stated, a grin breaking through her earlier tension. But with Claudia's glare cutting through the celebratory atmosphere, Elena realized that the confrontation she had managed to quell within her family was about to demand her full attention. What awaited her outside those stage lights could change everything she had just fought to reclaim. Elena stepped away from Caroline, the weight of their moment still lingering between them like an unfinished melody. However, the reality beyond the stage loomed larger now. Her resolve, though bolstered by the embrace, began to fray as she felt the penetrating gaze of Claudia. A flicker of doubt scurried behind her thoughts. Had she miscalculated their timing for healing? As she descended the stairs from the stage, each step felt heavier than the last, her mind a flurry of questions. Claudia's presence was electric, a raw nerve slicing through the fragile peace she had just found. Memories of whispered insults and dismissive gestures clawed at the edges of Elena's mind. "Why are you doing this?" Claudia's voice sliced through the ambient chatter, forcing Elena to confront her. The scorn oozed from her words, tainting the fragile atmosphere that had just begun to flourish between mother and daughter. "I am doing this for me," Elena replied, a steely edge slipping into her tone. There was strength in her newfound resolve, and she was unwilling to allow Claudia's hostility to unravel it. "I need to reclaim my story." Claudia rolled her eyes, her disdain wrapping around Elena like a vice. "Reclaim your story? By letting her back in? You can't seriously believe that the past doesn't matter." "I know the past matters," Elena retorted, her heart pounding. "But I am choosing to reshape it. This is my life, Claudia. You may not understand what it's like to bear the weight of unresolved hurt, but I won't carry it anymore." Elena felt a shift within herself, a quietly burgeoning confidence replacing the uncertainty she had harbored moments earlier. Claudia's presence, the negativity she exuded, was no longer a burden but an impulse for her to move forward. As they stood toe to toe, the room buzzing with the energy of unresolved stories, Elena let the moment draw her attention back to her true purpose. Art. It was not just her escape, it was her lighthouse guiding her through the stormy seas of familial strife. I have a vision, Elena spoke, the conviction coloring her words. A vision that goes beyond this, beyond me and my mother. It's about how we can use our experiences to fuel something greater. Claudia leaned against the wall, arms crossed, her expression a blend of skepticism and curiosity. A vision? You think art can change anything? Not just art, but the stories we weave within it, Elena asserted, heart racing with the thrill of her own conviction. Each painting I create is a piece of my soul, and through it, I can connect with people. I want to use my art to guide others who carry similar burdens. It's not just about healing, it's about growth, transformation. For a moment, Claudia's hardened stance faltered. There was something in Elena's eyes, an assurance that now pulled at the edges of her own discontent. Perhaps, for once, she was experiencing a flicker of intrigue, yet even as a spark of connection ignited, Elena felt the tension mount anew. What if Claudia refused to join her journey? What if she continued to cling to the past, dragging Elena back down with her? There was a tempest brewing beneath the surface, and the faintest doubt began to creep in. Could she truly forge the path she envisioned? The answer lay painfully close yet remained just out of reach. As the audience dissolved around them, Elena realized that in her pursuit of artistic truth, she needed to start revealing hidden parts of herself, vulnerabilities she had long kept buried. Will you choose to be part of this story? She finally asked Claudia, a tentative challenge resting on her tongue. It was not merely an invitation, it was a dare to confront the shared past they had both evaded for too long. Claudia opened her mouth, words poised on the brink. The air thickened with uncertainty, and Elena felt her heart race in anticipation. Would Claudia step into that light, or would she retreat back into shadow, the past refusing to relinquish its grip? The realization set in, the future depended not on a reconciled mother-daughter relationship alone, but on how deeply Elena was willing to dig into her own essence, exposing both beauty and pain. Just as she stood at the precipice of choice, she felt the pull of destiny offering potential beyond this encounter. And as the answer moved closer, the question remained: who would Elena become in the process? As the tension hung heavy between them, Elena felt her pulse quicken, her resolve solidifying. The stage lights dimmed, casting shadows around them that felt almost protective. She was aware that the stakes had never been higher. This was more than a confrontation, it was a chance to redefine herself. Claudia's silence morphed into a suffocating weight, and Elena seized the moment, forcing herself to look deeper into the well of her courage, where self-doubt had once festered. You always taught me to be strong, she said, her voice steady, a thin veneer of calm overlaying the chaos inside. Now it's time to show strength in a different way. Her mother scoffed, but the doubt that flickered across Claudia's countenance told a different story. Elena analyzed her mother's reaction, searching for signs of what might beckon her onto this path of healing. Perhaps it would require more than just words, perhaps actions could bridge the chasm. What if we could rewrite this history, Claudia? Not only for us but for anyone who has felt what we've felt. Elena suggested, her mind racing with thoughts of the exhibition she had once envisioned. It had started as a display of her art, meant to showcase her journey, but now it danced enticingly close to something altogether transformative. Art is just scatterings of paint on canvas, Claudia shot back, but her voice wavered. You really believe it can shake the foundations of our past? Elena took a deep breath, adrenaline coursing through her. It's not just about painting, it's about giving voice to our experiences. I can capture the bitterness we faced, the struggles, and turn them into something beautiful. It's about connection. As she spoke, new images flashed in her mind, and she saw the exhibit not merely as an art show but as a living archive of their shared pain, healing, and evolving identities. It was a narrative built on canvas, but the story would resonate far beyond it, could empower others who felt ensnared by their pasts. Claudia's hardened expression softened for just a moment. And what if they reject it? What if your art doesn't resonate? The doubt clawed at Elena, momentarily suffocating her vision. But in that hesitation, a spark of determination ignited. The very nature of art was the risk in vulnerability. Then I must tell the story anyway. For myself. For us. There was a moment of stillness, a tentative bridge stretching between them, before Claudia's defenses raised again. You think you can just wave a wand and make things better? I'm giving my past color, Elena replied, fighting back tears. I'm not saying it will fix everything. I'm saying it's time to stop burying it. It's time to create something new from what we've learned. The confrontation spilled over, and they stood on the brink of a shared understanding. She could see cracks in Claudia's armor, a glimpse of the woman who once felt joy beneath layers of ironclad resentment. Elena, she said, quieter now, you're not the only one who has hurt. I know, Elena interrupted gently, realizing that perhaps this was the moment they both needed to become uncomfortable together. But we cannot heal if we stay silent. It's time for both of us to choose openness over anger. A silence filled the air as the specters of their past hung between them like ghosts waiting to be freed or redeemed. The challenge that lay before them stood stark and dynamic. They each teetered on the edge of a choice: do they forge ahead into uncharted territory, or retreat into familiar shadows? As her heart drummed loudly in her chest, Elena felt the pulse of possibility encapsulating the air. The potential for a true transformation rested just a breath away. Overwhelmed but exhilarated by the challenge, she took a step closer to Claudia. Will you create with me, Claudia? She asked, the unspoken question of whether they could unite their differences echoed beneath her words. Claudia stared back, her expression caught between negotiation and reflection. Would she step into the light with Elena, or retreat back into the safety of shadows? Both women stood, suspended in uncertainty, ready to confront everything they had avoided for years. And the weight of their unspoken choices hung palpably in the air, snapping like a taut string on the verge of release. Elena knew this was just the beginning. As they stood poised on the threshold of a journey fraught with both promise and peril, she wondered just how deep the wounds went and whether their shared artistry could truly be a canvas for redemption. Feeling the intense gravity of the moment, she thought about the risks ahead. What if we can't undo our past, but we can reshape how we live within it? The question lingered, her heart racing as she awaited Claudia's response. Two souls at the crossroads, one step shy of a moment that could either redefine them or leave them forever bound to their sorrow. Elena's pulse raced as she waited for Claudia to respond, the air thick with tension that sparkled with both fear and hope. Would this be the moment she had long anticipated, a chance to break through years of silence, or would Claudia retreat back into the shadows they had always inhabited? The fear of rejection clawed at her. Suddenly, Claudia shifted her gaze, looking not at Elena but somewhere past her, as if the memories of their shared past had momentarily pulled her away. For an instant, Elena saw the flicker of what had once been a mother who had laughed, who had nurtured creativity instead of burying it beneath the weight of resentment. Creating something new doesn't mean you're negating the past, Claudia finally murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. It recognizes it, acknowledges it. You might be onto something. Elena felt the ground shift beneath her. Could this be the breakthrough she had yearned for? Then let us do it together. Let us confront our history and let our art speak. We could build a narrative that shows where we've been and where we can go. Yet even as she said it, doubt niggled at the edges of her thoughts. Would Claudia truly follow her? Was she prepared to bear the burden that came with revisiting their pain? Self-doubt hissed in her ears, its venom seeping into her conviction. But she gathered herself, forcing the words out with clarity, a resolution taking root deep within her. It won't be easy. We will have to face uncomfortable truths. But think of how freeing it would be to transform that burden into something meaningful. Claudia flicked her eyes back, and her expression was inscrutable. You're proposing to lay our lives bare for the world? You're willing to dive into the pain that we've both avoided? The weight of her mother's questioning sent tremors of uncertainty through Elena's core. Yes, there would be pain, multitudes of it. But it also promised healing, liberation. It was a chance at reconciliation not just between them, but with their own selves. Yes, Elena replied, steeling her voice with a fierce sense of determination. I want to speak not only for myself but for anyone who has felt trapped by their history. Let us take the risk and embrace the process together. Then something shifted within Claudia, the rigid lines of her face softened. The armor of the years seemed less confining, and, for the first time, she appeared willing to explore the possibilities. You always were the artist, Claudia said with a hint of admiration and grudging respect. Fine. But if we're to do this, you must be prepared for the consequences. Elena's heart soared, but adrenaline coursed through her veins as the weight of the commitment settled firmly. It was a double-edged sword. She would invite scrutiny, judgment, and perhaps the pain of memories that lay dormant. I'm ready, Elena said, her voice unwavering. But let us set boundaries for how deep we dive. It's important that we protect each other in this process. Claudia held her gaze, and Elena could see the flicker of a fierce, protective instinct. But hesitation lingered, edging into the recesses of Claudia's heart. I can't promise I won't pull back when it gets hard, Claudia admitted, a raw honesty draping her words. That's okay. We can navigate that together one step at a time. As they locked eyes, a fragile understanding grew in the air surrounding them, like fragile threads weaving into a tapestry of hope. But questions loomed larger than ever. Was their bond strong enough to survive the unearthing of their past? The challenge ahead felt monumental, a turning point acquainted with both dread and excitement. Elena took a deep breath, feeling the momentum build within her. They could harbor countless memories, wishes, and fears, but this was just the beginning. What they would unearth, she couldn't yet fathom. Let us make a plan, she said, the momentum carrying her into newfound territory. We can start small. What will our first piece look like? But before she could get lost in the vision of creation, something deep inside her also realized that every brush stroke and word posted on canvas would unveil layers she had yet to confront. With Claudia at her side, would they be strong enough to break through the facade they had carefully maintained for years? The air thickened with possibility, and Elena suddenly felt a pang of awareness. What if the exposure revealed more than she was ready to share? What if that voice she was desperately trying to give others was also attempting to speak for her? Can I truly embrace everything this journey demands? She questioned silently, her thoughts swirling with the urgency of impending confrontation. Claudia's ghostly smile lingered in her mind, a testament to the uncertain path ahead. As they dove into their creative project, would they find healing or awaken dormant shadows that were better left buried? The answer hinted at the cusp of revelation, and Elena knew the moment of truth was looming. Would they emerge transformed, or would old wounds seal their fates once more? Elena sat at her cluttered desk, the remnants of brushes and half-finished sketches surrounding her like echoes of the past. The afternoon light filtered through the window, casting soft shadows that danced across her workspace, but the brightness only heightened her apprehension. With Claudia's agreement ringing in her ears, she felt the reality of their pact taking shape, molding her excitement into a palpable tension. What would their first piece entail? As she thought about this, she felt the weight of her convictions clashing with the uncertainty of the deeper truths she still kept at bay. The thought of exposing the rawness of their history terrified her. It was one thing to want transformation, but another to actualize it in such an intimate way. Elena reached for her sketchbook, its pages filled with discarded ideas and spiraled thoughts, and began to doodle absent-mindedly. Her pencil strokes were hesitant at first, reflecting her internal conflict. If she were to harness their shared past, the art would need to convey more than just surface aesthetics. It would require a narrative weight that neither of them had explored. Images of their fragmented lives began to swirl in her mind, fragments of laughter that turned into silence, bright colors dulled by pain. She paused, overwhelmed by the enormity of reconceptualizing her life as a source of inspiration rather than a crucible of wounds. Know your audience, she muttered under her breath, reflecting on the reviews she had received during her earlier exhibits. Art is not just about expression, it's also about connection, bridging the gap between creator and observer. A hesitance lingered. Could she invite viewers to witness the rawness without recoiling back into self-doubt? Claudia, we've worked together before. What if we used your experiences? Your methods? Elena spoke into the quiet room, seeking clarity in her thoughts. She imagined Claudia's muted responses, their conversations often punctuated by tension that hinted at the battles between them. The idea of collaborating through their discord seemed both brilliant and terrifying. A sudden urgency seized her. She grabbed her phone and sent a text to Claudia, proposing a tentative meeting to discuss their concept. "We need to talk specifics," she wrote, heart racing at the prospect of clarity amid the emotional fog. Moments later, those familiar three dots indicated a reply. "I'm in. But let us meet somewhere neutral." Elena's pulse quickened. A neutral space. Was this an admission of vulnerability or an act of caution? She wrestled with her own reaction to Claudia's suggestion. The detached nature of neutrality made her anxious. It felt like a barrier she was unaccustomed to. But perhaps it was necessary. They were stepping into deeper waters, and perhaps distance could allow them both to breathe, weigh their truths without being overwhelmed by the emotional chain link to each other. As she awaited Claudia's next answer, Elena's thoughts spiraled into introspection. What would she say when confronted with the vulnerabilities of their past? Would she be able to articulate the nuances of their shared pain, or would it dissipate into metaphorical mists as past memories often do? Over the next few days, she found herself diving into research about narrative techniques in art, understanding that telling a story required mastery over the unspoken as much as the visible. Each day, she diligently crafted images that captured fragments of her past, forcing herself to examine old photographs and letters, artifacts that felt like anchors, tethering her to moments she had thought would remain buried. On the night before their meeting, she prepared her workspace for the first time in months, clearing it of clutter to create space for her ideas. She could no longer linger in the uncertainties of her previous work. She needed to boldly step forward into their project with a willingness to strip back layers of physical embodiment of the emotional task ahead. In the quiet moments leading into the dawning day, Elena pondered if she could truly embrace every aspect of this project. Would it illuminate their pasts, or would it deepen the wounds that had festered beyond the surface? With each brushstroke she practiced, she felt the pressure to transform that uncertainty into clarity. As first light illuminated her studio, Elena knew that the meeting with Claudia was more than just a conversation, it was the very threshold of their journey. They would need to confront not only their past together but also their individual perceptions of pain and healing. But would they be ready to look beyond the comfortable shadows? Soon, they would face their unfolding narrative. Soon, they'd have to confront the hidden dark beneath the colors they hoped to create. Would they unearth a legacy of strength, or would they find only turmoil gripped by regret? The dawn of their collaboration was at hand, and the uncharted territory ahead beckoned, both thrilling and fraught with the possibility of revelation. The moment approached. Would the night's darkness ultimately guide them to light, or entrap them in the shadows they had fought to escape? Elena arrived at the cafe, her heart pounding beneath the weight of anticipation. The glass door swung open, emitting a chime that felt loud against the backdrop of murmured conversations and clinking cups. She scanned the room, searching for Claudia, a familiar figure cloaked in an aura of unresolved tension. Plopping down at a small table, she brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous habit she had indulged in since childhood. As she turned her gaze to the side window, watching the world rush by, she forced herself to breathe steadily. This meeting was pivotal, a moment where their pasts would either be reconciled or unravel further into chaos. When Claudia entered, their eyes locked momentarily, sparking an unspoken acknowledgement of the weight they carried. Seating herself across from Elena, Claudia's expression morphed from guardedness to something softer, but the edges of her brows still held tension. Would they navigate the wave of emotion, or would they falter? "Thanks for meeting," Elena initiated, her voice a mixture of warmth and trepidation. Claudia nodded, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I think we both know this isn't just about art." Elena allowed a flicker of relief to wash over her. They were on the same page, although the depths they needed to explore felt tidal. "It's about understanding our story. The pain, the joy, everything." Their conversation began to flow, but each new idea unveiled the complexities buried within their history. Claudia shared her thoughts, revealing her own vulnerability, and Elena truly listened, unpacking the layers of their shared experiences. Time after time, they stumbled upon moments that had been unsaid, words that had transformed into unaddressed grievances. "This might be a way to heal," Claudia finally said, her voice breaking through a silence thick with unspooled memories. "But what if we hurt each other more? What if our pasts ripple into this work?" Elena felt that familiar urgency surge within her, an overwhelming need to lay bare not just the past but her evolving self. She leaned forward, her resolve firming. "We can't let fear dictate this. If we're going to create something real, we have to be honest, even if it's painful." As their discussions matured, Elena began to sense an evolution within herself, an unfamiliar strength blooming in the fertile soil of vulnerability. She pitched ideas that dwelled on the traumatic interplay of their experiences. What if they depicted moments of chaos juxtaposed against streaks of color that signified hope? Could they manifest fragility in their canvas like a mirror that reflected their journey? But as Elena unveiled these thoughts, she couldn't ignore the nagging question at the back of her mind. Would she be able to detach her emotional struggles from the process of creation? The artist in her loved the idea of raw authenticity, but the person she was still recoiled at the thought of exposing herself to criticism, especially from Claudia. That a shared silence settled between them, charged with unspoken fears. It hung there heavy, punctuating the moment with an urgency that was palpable. The two artists looked at each other, understanding their interconnectedness was as fraught as it was profound. "What do you think about using our voices in the artwork? Not just the images, but words?" Elena suggested, her heart racing. "We could narrate the unspoken parts of our story. Let the viewers feel what we felt." Claudia's eyes widened, seeing the brilliance in the idea, but hardly the emotional readiness. "That's bold. But what if those words send things spiraling beyond what we can manage?" "Then we manage it together," Elena insisted, tapping into an assertiveness that took her by surprise. The growing determination was novel and invigorating. It felt like a small revolution echoing through her. As they slowly began to sketch out their project, a connection started to rekindle. It was shaky yet promising, a fusion of two talents daring to confront their shadows. And for the first time in a long while, Elena glimpsed the potential of who she could become, not just as an artist, but as a person unshackled from the hesitations that had defined her. But beneath the budding collaboration lingered a shadow of uncertainty. The roots of pain they would traverse were thick and tangled. Would this creative process illuminate their past or doom them to relive it? When she finally raised her gaze to meet Claudia's, Elena felt their resolve solidify. It was time to take the plunge, to embrace both the light and the dark. Together, they would tread that line between bravery and fear. Yet, as they prepared to set their ideas in motion, the unease loomed larger. There was the stirrings of something deeper, a looming confrontation with forgotten truths that were more unsettling than they ever anticipated. Tomorrow, they would begin the journey of creation, but the question remained, would they be able to confront their pasts without losing themselves again in the process? Elena's heart raced as she stood in her now familiar studio, brushes poised above her canvas like the anticipation before a storm. With each stroke, she was no longer just an artist revealing her past, she was a storyteller reweaving her family's narrative into vibrant shades and swirling emotions. The collaboration with Claudia had become not only a project of art but a tapestry of personal redemption. They had spent weeks discussing their shared history and the deeper scars that crisscrossed their lives, forming intricate paths neither could ignore. Elena's latest piece began to take shape, a bold and colorful representation of their tumultuous relationship, embodied in swirling blues and fiery reds. Each color resonated with the urgency for transformation. The shadows of their past battled against the light of emerging hope. Reflecting on their journey, she felt the familiar echo of self-doubt skirt at the edges of her determination. But this time, that doubt was less potent. The countless late nights spent narrating their story had taught her that vulnerability held its own power. She vividly recalled pivotal moments with Claudia, the gradual unfolding of their lives through shared dialogue, each conversation a stepping stone into the healing waters of their fractured history, and then came the day of the unveiling, the exhibit they had named, Reclaimed. It was not just an exhibit but a declaration of their intertwined identities, a testament to their fortitude in overcoming the past. As they set up the gallery, Elena's chest tightened with anticipation. Fear gnawed at her, but it was now paired with an exhilarating energy. The visit of friends, colleagues, and family would soon confirm her transformation from an artist overshadowed by doubt into a beacon of authenticity. When the first guests arrived, a wave of exhilaration cascaded over her, transforming her nervousness into a palpable energy that filled the room. Each painting spoke volumes, the narratives woven within pulsating with life. As she greeted familiar faces, some supportive, others long skeptical, she felt an essential connection that had previously eluded her. Claudia stepped forward, a look of pride flashing across her face as she surveyed their work. "You did it," she murmured, almost reverently. The poignant moment struck Elena. Her mother had stepped out of the shadows and joined her on the path toward healing. This was their legacy, not buried in silence but thriving in expression. As the night progressed, the audience's response was electric. Conversations buzzed through the gallery, vibrant with engagement. Each viewer seemed to hold a mirror to their own pasts, reflecting on how stories of love and loss intermingled, serving as both a caveat and a courage. Critics praised her brave authenticity, recognizing that the emotions portrayed transcended individual experiences, extending a compassionate reach to the audience. Validation rushed through Elena like a long-missed breath of fresh air. She could see conversations evolve, a coworker expressing undying respect, a former rival who had stood in ridicule, now nodding appreciatively at the intricacies of her art, perhaps moved by their shared recognition of navigating pain. Just then, through the murmurs of admiration and applause, she caught a glimpse of her mother standing at the periphery of the crowd. Caroline seemed astounded, her eyes glistening under the gallery lights. In that moment, the earlier estrangement melted away. Here was a woman ready to embrace the truths they had once been too afraid to confront together. Elena found the strength to step away from the crowd, feeling drawn to her mother. Without hesitation, she closed the gap between them, their past framed by the blues and reds of their shared canvases. "This is ours," Elena asserted softly, the weight of guardianship settling firmly upon her shoulders. Caroline smiled through the tears. "I could never have imagined you releasing your voice like this." "I am so proud, Elena." The acknowledgement ignited a warmth deep within Elena, replacing years of resentment with the healing balm of love and commitment to the future. "Thank you for being here," Elena replied, purpose crystallizing behind her words. They had embarked on this journey to honor their history and reclaim their storytelling. That night marked the solidification of Elena's personal growth. She was no longer defined by her grandmother's legacy or her mother's past mistakes. She had taken up her family's mantle and crafted a new narrative rooted in authenticity and courage. Her art was more than color on canvas, it was a declaration of her identity, her triumph. For the first time, she recognized the true power of her voice, one that could reach far beyond the studio. She had proved herself as an artist, a communicator, and ultimately someone who could navigate the complexity of heritage without fear. As the exhibit buzzed around her, the foundations of uncertainty crumbled into the vibrant colors unfolding in front of her. At last, she could embrace who she was, an artist proud of her roots, unswayed by the ghosts that once haunted her. This was the culmination of her journey, a fortress built not from the shadows of her past but from the colorful legacy she had chosen to shape. And as she looked around, she knew this chapter had ended, and another was ready to begin, one where her stories would pave the way for others still lost in their own darkness. Now, more than ever, she was ready to thrive. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It matters. Comment below with your reactions or theories about the ending. Your voice is important. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who crave to see this captivating conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.